Episode 1. Good morning, Jay.
Through the years I've been reviewing the Game Boy family of consoles, I've had to struggle with trying to comprehend a bunch of these EDU-TAINMENT type cartridges that populate typically the late years of each console's lifespan. Whether it's one of Doraemon's Study Boy series that closed out the GBC library, or the seemingly endless kanji learning tools that were brought out for the DMG library right up past the turn of the millennium, it was, I suppose, kind of neat that these old consoles were getting yet another new lease of life as portable educational tools in the pre-smartphone era. They are devilishly tricky things to review, however, both due to the intensity of the text needing to be translated, as well as the understandable lack of content inherently found in such a thing. How can you make a kanji to hiragana dictionary interesting for more than a couple of paragraphs? Thankfully, I've not had to make all that many videos on the subject yet on this channel because, as I say, you'd typically find these were released at the tail end of the console's career, if not after the fact. At least with Game Boy anyway, that's typically how it worked. When I finally came around to compiling the chronological list of Game Boy Advance titles, however, one that stuck out was this 6-cartridge series that I'd literally never even heard of before, the first of which was a launch title for the console in Japan, and the following 5 all released on the same day a few months later. Before looking into it, I simply assumed that they might be a collection of puzzles like Picross or some sort of Sudoku-style things. However, they are in fact a mildly interesting collection of educational content. Specifically, they appear to be aimed at young to middle-aged Japanese children, or at least people learning English to what we as native speakers would consider incredibly basic. Unlike the text-heavy ones that were focused on learning tons of English vocab or verb conjugation, and particularly how to read and write it, this one has barely any text in-game. Instead, it utilized
Episode 2. Let's have breakfast.
To an impressive extent, it must be said, the Game Boy Advance's improved sound capabilities to teach basic elements of the language from a listening perspective. You control this little spaced-out looking kid called Jay, and basically have to wander around your house performing little tasks that your parents or sister tell you to. Like I say, there's no Japanese or English text on screen, so players would have to actually listen to what the game tells you to do. There is an option to give pictorial hints as well. For instance, if your mum wants you to fetch the salad, there'll be a little picture of a salad. I suppose the idea is that you can listen out for the operative noun, then once you've learned it, turn the pictures off and see if you can still get it. I did used to be an EFL teacher at one point in my past. I wasn't very good though. There being 6 cartridges here might seem a little extravagant, especially when you realise the same environments cross over all the series. There are quite a lot of speech segments though, so cart space was probably reserved for that, and the bitrate must be higher than you'd normally expect because it's possibly the clearest I've ever heard on the GBA. Compare it to the 2005 title The Bible Game, for example. The small handful of vocal lines in that title don't even come close to the clarity here, but then that one had way more text. Wisely, the music and sound effects are kept to a minimum when the characters are speaking. As a set of lessons, it's pretty well structured too, starting off with very rudimentary language on number 1 and getting a little more advanced by number 6. You can't just skip ahead though. After you complete all 5 or so chapters on the first cartridge, you'll get a password that you need to enter into the start of number 2 or else you can't access it. So yeah, I'm assuming if you're watching me, then your English is at least fairly good, and so there's realistically nothing for you here. Still, it's nice to document these things, I suppose, and I'm trying to be a completionist here. Not that one, God. So I'm committed to looking at all 1500 whatever it is titles if it takes me until I'm 60. By that point, I might be so addled in the brain that these little language games actually become kinda useful.
Bed. Blanket. Pillow.
Are you going outside?
Let's go with Coo. Why don't you run with Coo? Run toward me. Ready, run! my brother.